Priya, and welcome to the Agentic Quality Podcast. It's so nice to have you with us today.
Thank you, Tatyana. It's my pleasure to be here.
And I would love to start with your introduction. Can you tell us a bit about what you do and your past and current roles?
Sure. I have been with the quality world for the last 17 plus years. I started off my journey as a developer. Soon after, I believe within a year, I got an opportunity to move to testing. And since then, I've been so passionate about quality that I haven't looked back on going to another role. During these 17 years, I've worked in multiple MNCs and multiple product-based companies. 2 or 3 of them have been my biggest gigs. But in general, what I have been passionate about throughout this whole world is quality management. Since last 10 years, I've been into management, and one thing that I love doing is ensuring, growing more and more QAEs and SDETs and QA managers and SDMs who manage SDETs. That has been my key role, especially in the last 10 years. I worked with multiple domains. I have worked with, major clients in the retail business. I worked with domains like pharmacy. I've worked in domains like transportation business. I've worked in domains like marketplace. So I've worked across all those domains. And one thing that I've learned, which is common, is that the quality problems exist in all the domains.
They're all the same everywhere. And I share your passion for quality and quality management. So that's something we have in common. And what kind of products have you been supporting in all of these different domains?
My products have always been mostly software oriented. So I've been into majority of my career has been into software engineering. Majority of the work, for example, the work I've done with pharmacy has been related to applications, software applications. A lot of the work I've done with transportation business has been related to a lot of seller facing and shipper facing applications. I worked with a lot of areas related to the AWS technologies and stuff. But overall, the common theme has been software. I've worked a little bit on the hardware side, but it's not too deep. My focus or my passion has been mostly on the software side.
Great. And you probably scale quality in different size of organization. So when teams scale and there are more engineers, there's more services, more releases, where do you see the quality usually starts to break down first?
I like to say it like the first fracture typically appears in the connections, right? And not the components. Like, when you think of like a growing city, it's the infrastructure that feels the strain first. So I feel like there are 3 critical breaking points where we should invest on: communication channels between teams, consistency of quality best practices, and then the cross-service dependencies is something that I feel where breakdown points occur. It's like a domino effect, right? Like the issues cascade like dominoes. One weak link, it affects the entire cabin.
Yeah. And what are the most common bottlenecks that organizations face when they scale quality?
I have noticed like there've been like multiple bottlenecks, but I can probably think of like the 4 major ones that I have noticed across all these domains. Is one is people, right? Your processes are as strong as the people who execute them. So if you don't have the right skills, in automation or resistance to cultural change or unclear responsibility, it can be a problem. Then we have the process. Process without a purpose, doesn't make any sense. So inconsistent standards in the process or manual approval bottlenecks. These are some of the other examples. The third one I strongly feel about is tooling. The test infrastructure scaling, the technical debt, the tool fragmentation are some of the other examples. And then the last one I want to call it more like an ownership. I feel like when everyone owns quality, sometimes no one does. And it's really important that who is having the right accountability. How are we not making the responsibility siloed?
And when you talk about tools and you talk about infrastructure, that's definitely, you have to maintain proper environments for the bigger teams to do the testing, to do more of it, test automation runs and whatnot. So do you also mean test automation? How does test automation scales the more developers you add to the mix? And how do you scale the QA team to maintain the right ratio?
That's a great question. So I think it depends on not one rule fits all. I think it depends on the kind of program you're working on and the kind of talent you're working with. If you have a bigger SD team and a smaller QA team, which is kind of the trend or which is kind of like a norm right now, I my recommendation always is like, how can we shift quality left on how can we have unit test and integration test coverage being the maximum amount of quality coverage being done by the SDs at the pipeline level? And then how can we minimize the amount of end-to-end testing dependency on the QAs? And then how can we minimize the least number of test cases to be done at the UAT phase, where we expect either the product managers or the PI, the business owners, to be running that test in a real customer oriented environment, right?
And by the end of the day, all we're trying to do is to speed up the test automation development, right? Because it's always what we have to do to scale the feature development. And how do you balance speed versus confidence? Like how fast, a lot of times we do the manual testing, we build test automation tech debt to go fast to release more often. But how do you balance that speed and confidence of the releases when there is pressure?
Yeah, it's an everyday story where you keep getting this question, hey, how can we speed it up, right? And one thing that I keep saying is speed without quality is just rushing to failure. I feel like we focus on multiple things like risk-based testing approaches. We should focus on how can we add more automated quality gates. We should focus on how feature flags, can be implemented for gradual rollouts. Strong monitoring in place and strong observability in place to make sure that even when we are going ahead with the launches without the proper time we needed, can we still monitor and observe to make sure that we can avoid any kind of failures?
Yeah, those are great best practices that you're sharing. And those are more of a mature model of quality, right? So that you're talking about. So let's talk about what does that more mature quality model look like at scale, in addition to all of those things that you just talked about.
Yeah, I think maturity is a subjective term. And you probably know it the best as well. Like every org that you probably have also worked on, and it's like you see a different level of maturity. I think it's not about a perfect process. It's about consistent improvement, right? Like I feel like the key characteristics I like to build in my org is quality built into development, which is the most important thing, right? How we can make developers think of quality as and when they're developing. The next one I said is, automated quality gates, how we can implement more automation to the framework, how we can do data driven decisions to make sure that we are building in that maturity of we are not just blindly taking decisions, we're actually doing data driven decisions. And then, as I said before, observability is a key thing, because I feel like if we are not observing and learning from the current programs, we will not be able to mature our processes at the same pace.
And the data-driven decisions you're talking about is the production data, like what our customers are seeing. Is that where we're driving the kind of test coverage and test decisions from, or what other data?
I think it's also about the quality specific data, right? Like if we have seen the data from previous programs on like what kind of issues we actually saw in production, or what kind of issues actually slipped from the development phase that should have caught at the development phase, what issues slipped from the end-to-end testing phase that should have been caught at end-to-end testing phase. I think all of that data analysis is also helpful to understand where did we actually lack when we were actually doing the planning, so that we can take those lessons for the upcoming programs.
Great. And so talking about the higher quality maturity model, what are some of the signals that will tell you that the team is on a higher or lower maturity level as far as quality processes go?
I think it depends on how the team is feeling, right? And especially, I feel like I like to calculate how the quality is doing by the frustration level of my QA phase.
That's a very good signal.
So the moment I ask them, how is it going? And I see fear in their eyes, I know something is wrong. And I know that we haven't been able to either get the right time to implement the right quality phase, or in spite of getting the right time, they're still a little less confident about how things are going, just because they're finding a bunch of issues that they weren't expecting to find at this stage. So all of that, I think, gives me an indication if that maturity level is working out or not. And again, it is at different level, right? It doesn't have to be just at the QA phase, all the way up to the leadership on how all of this cascades up to represents that how matured we have been with our QA processes.
And if QA is scrambling to sign off on releases, that usually means they are sometimes taking shortcuts to develop test automation, and they're building tech debt. And then, we're spending more and more time on release validation and regression testing, right? But let's talk about how AI can come to the rescue. So AI is everywhere now. Do you see it showing up for quality, and in what ways?
100%. I think AI is everywhere. And again, not just QA, but I think all over the world. But specific to quality, right? I like to generally start my vision about AI is that it's not going to ever replace quality engineers. It's just going to amplify our capabilities to do better. The real applications where, just to be a little bit more precise on where I feel the QAs can really get the benefit, is test case generation, right? It's going to be so simpler with AI. Log analysis is going to be so simpler with AI. Defect prediction. I have been really impressed with some of the work that my team has been doing on defect prediction. Performance pattern recognition, right? Like how you can actually envision that how your performance of your application is going to do along with patterns. This is something really impressive that we have been trying to do manually for a long time.
And how do you see AI changing the role of quality engineers themselves?
I think it wouldn't change the role of the quality engineer itself, but I think we have to get a little bit more adapted to how we use Gen AI into our existing roles, right? So without even changing our roles, it's more about how can we pace things up where AI can actually help versus spending time in things where AI cannot help. For example, there is still a level of like human involvement needed when you are thinking of the risk analysis, or how, because your org better like as a human versus how much you can feed into the AI on knowing what has been the historical information about your org, or where you have seen that developers have probably haven't done their job, or where you have felt that product managers haven't done their job, and all of that. I think some of those things need that manual touch. This is where we need to be focusing more time on how we strategize things manually. But when it comes to like generating test cases, as I said, thinking about defect prediction, thinking about adding more tools, that's where Gen AI should be used and leveraged. And it's no rocket science. I also keep getting a lot of like, I see a lot of hesitation in some QAs and like, hey, why, is it too technical? It's in fact much simpler than how, when people remember, like when we moved from manual world to automated world, when people were trying to learn Selenium and Appium and JavaScript and all that. I think it's much simpler than that, because now Gen AI is actually letting you learn itself by giving you easier prompts and things to do. So I would suggest people to just not be scared of it, just implement it in your own control.
Yeah, for sure. I think you're saying that it will make our job easier. So some of the things that are, repeatable, or some of the work that can be done by AI, we're not going to have to do, but we'll have to strategize more, and we'll have to kind of manage AI as an apprentice in some way. All right. But we definitely have to learn how to use it, because without that, we're probably going to be in an old age using old tools, right?
100%.
And I want to talk a little bit about misconceptions about quality engineering. What is one thing that engineering leaders underestimate about quality or misunderstand about quality?
Great question. I think, honestly, I think I have, over the last 17 years, I've seen multiple engineering leaders now, and I think everybody is very different on how they think about quality. But at least in the last few years, I've been noticing that people have been thinking of quality a lot. And especially now in the Gen AI world, people know that one thing, that the way the code has been pushed now because of LLM, the speed with which we are now coding is so fast that the quality guardrails have become more and more important. So the focus has been seen transforming a lot. But one thing I feel really importantly is that you can't transform quality overnight. It's a journey. It's not an event, right? Some of the common underestimations I've seen is that people don't invest too much on cultural change, right? Like people think that adding more QAs is going to just change everything. The culture has to change from the bottoms up, right? The infrastructure investment needs to change. We do not take infrastructure very seriously, but the way we build our code, the way we build our pipelines, the way we build our integration tests, it's really important. Training and upskilling needs are sometimes underestimated too. I feel like, again, there is a lot of focus on like, hey, let's hire QAs and they'll come and test it. I feel like there has to be that upskilling of people from all over, including QAs and SDETs, on how we can upskill them to think of quality in a more matured way, especially now in the world of Gen AI.
Definitely. Adding quality engineers does not help with scaling the team very well because it adds so much overhead. You have to maintain the standards, you have to manage the team, you have to have time for this team to actually do some work in a pipeline or in a release cycle. So I always try to balance how big of a QA team we are building. So we can maintain the agility and how frequently we can release without delaying the release with all of the testing work. Right?
Exactly.
And what skills do you think these quality engineers need to develop to stay relevant in today's world?
I think you don't need a specific new skill. I think it's more about just being open to change. I think that's one thing that nobody can. There's no training for that. It's just about how you are willing to accept the change. There is a lot of information available on the internet, and all these Gen AI tools that exist in the world. You just Google it up, and you'll have bunch of information to learn from. What thing that we shouldn't be very rigid about our existing previous best practices, right? I think we need to just accept the fact that things are going to get much easier if we start using this. So the skills I would say is I wouldn't even say you need coding skills anymore because even coding Gen AI is willing to do it for you. So as long as you are willing to adapt to the change and you are able to understand the training you actually need is how Gen AI can actually help you. And what are the areas where you can actually leverage AI to solve your daily work? I think that's the biggest skill change that you need.
And how do you motivate your team or how do you help them develop some of these skills? Or do you expect them to just kind of like go figure it out and go upskill yourself on their own?
I think I like to plan is that I start with the foundation, right? As I said, I think the first change we need to do is the culture and then the process, like how now we bring in Gen AI into our actual processes, right? Once the culture has changed. And then what exact tools now we need to use to implement, right? So this is how I prioritized it. It's especially this entire year is like, how the quality culture establishment, how can we divide clear ownership model, who is doing what, including AI, right? And then the automated infrastructure and then the metrics and monitoring, right? So for some of those things is something that I have been trying to strategize for my own org.
Awesome. And what advice would you give to leaders who are scaling quality nowadays and who are working on adapting AI in their dev teams and quality teams?
My advice to them is think of quality again as a culture. Think of quality as something that you invest in a long term. Don't think of quality as a short term gig that comes towards the end of any feature launch. Quality has to be embedded into our life cycle from the very beginning. How our product managers are thinking of quality, how our SDMs and SDs are thinking of project quality, how our QA is thinking of quality, how our the UATs are thinking of quality. I think all of that has to be aligned well for us to change the quality culture. One common myth that I have noticed is that hiring QAs or hiring SDETs and hiring contractors and all of that is going to just, the number of people is going to implement quality. I think it's not in the numbers. It's again in the mindset. At every phase of the development cycle, you need to think through quality.
That's a very good advice. I've also heard kind of opinions that AI is going to fix all of our quality problems, right? And that's not exactly true. We do need the quality mindset still have to be there. And then AI will supplement it and we'll use AI as a tool. It will speed things up. It will help us do things faster, but it won't replace the quality mindset. So quality mindset is still very important. And thank you for talking about it because I've seen plenty of teams who really need to, start thinking about it that way. And if people want to get in touch with you, Priya, or ask any questions, what's the best way for them to connect with you?
I'm available on LinkedIn. My full name, Priyamvada Govil. Feel free to look me up, and I'm happy to connect. I am happy to answer any questions if people have. So yeah, I think LinkedIn is the best way.
And any final thoughts you'd like to leave with engineering and quality leaders who are listening to us today?
I think I've kind of said enough, but I can just give a final quote that I really like is that quality at scale isn't about building a bigger quality team. It's about building quality into every team. And I think if we go ahead with this mindset, it's going to be a game changing for every quality team. I actually have learned a lot of that myself from a lot of people I have heard from in my quality leadership in the past, and I feel like it's something that I'm happy to give it back. And if anybody wants to reach out, I'm willing to talk about some of those ideas. I'm hopefully going to be there in Innovate QA too.
Yes, I would love to have you as a speaker talking about the quality mindset. This is such a great topic that I think belongs to Innovate QA conference, by the way, to everyone listening, is going to happen on June 4, 5 in Seattle. So please join us. And yes, would love to have you as a speaker there, Priya. And thank you so much for being today with us and sharing your thoughts on quality and leadership and scaling test teams. It's been a pleasure having you.
Thank you, Tatyana. It's always so much fun to talk to you. We both have been in similar worlds for many years, and I think it's rare to find somebody who thinks exactly like you. So I'm so glad that we were able to chat on this today.
Thank you for your kind words.
Okay.
Bye
Thank
now.
you. Bye. Take care. Bye.